Alright, so the veggie of the day is going to be asparagus. Now granted, I don't think I'm going to get very much, because maybe I'm the only one that likes asparagus. I don't know, maybe I don't like it too, but those look pretty good. Thinking about cutting up some fruit for later, so I'm going to get a pineapple. Most of the pineapples look pretty good. I would say, like, if you're looking for a healthy pineapple though, you're gonna look for some that don't have like a lot of yellow at the bottom. It might mean that they've gotten a little too far past ripe, but as long as they're pretty green, overall it's fairly healthy. You can kind of look at the bottom too. If this part right here, the stalk where it's cut off, has had some discoloration, I would say consider against buying it also. I think I'm also gonna get a watermelon. Right now, for whatever reason, H-E-B doesn't have the large watermelons, but these little personal watermelons are actually pretty good. They're overall really sweet. They're a little more expensive for not much watermelon, but that's okay, because I won't really eat it after it's been cut and stored for a couple of days. I like to eat it right after it's cut. So you have multiple options when it comes to pork chops, right? So you can either get like the thin cut pork chops, or you can get kind of a thicker cut. I like to personally go with the thicker cut, even if it is a little bit more expensive, just because of the way that it cooks better. I don't really like for it to be overcooked. So when you go with the thin pork chops, you do kind of get more bang for your buck, but they come out, best way to say it, like a lot of times overly cooked. And you can get like kind of these thicker pork chops, right? These thicker pork loins. They come straight from the loin and they're chopped off. Now, like I said, it's a little more expensive, but they cook a whole lot better. So we're gonna go ahead and go with these for the porks today. And they're thick enough that you can actually like cut it in half, and you can get 4 decent sized portions out of this. So I'm just gonna go with a block of sharp cheddar. I'm gonna go with H-E-B brand. It's only $4.48 for a pound, which is pretty good. So for the macaroni, I'm just gonna go obviously with macaroni pasta. I don't need a whole lot. I'm gonna do the large elbow macaroni. So for the macaroni and cheese, we're gonna do panko, Japanese style breadcrumbs. Now you can go with like traditional breadcrumbs, but panko is especially made for coating things or like topping things, and it stays crispy throughout the whole cooking process. So we're gonna go with plain panko breadcrumbs. So for a future project here, I am going to go ahead and buy some yeast. And also, we are going to grab some bread flour. Alright, so I'm going to start by making the macaroni and cheese first, so that way I can get into the oven while we're making all the other items. So I'm not going to overcomplicate it. Cheese sauce for macaroni and cheese doesn't have to be too complicated. Basically all I'm doing is I'm getting the milk hot. So I use about 2 cups of milk, and I'm going to use about 8 to 10 ounces of cheese. So I'm really just looking for the milk to get hot, and I'm going to start slowly incorporating cheese into it as it gets hot. I'm not really looking for it to be coming to a boil. What I do want to do is constantly keep it moving, so that way the milk doesn't burn to the bottom of the pan. You can actually look at it and not tell that the milk is burning to the bottom of the pan before it actually does. So now I think some of my culinary buddies or like culinary people out there might disagree, saying that you probably have to thicken the milk using a roux of some kind or a slurry of some kind. I don't think you do, just because the cheese alone will actually thicken it up. So I actually have just this stove on 4, which for me is probably like low medium, and I'm just going to slowly keep incorporating this cheese. So I'm going to go ahead and keep incorporating the cheese, and I'll show you what it's going to look like when we get to the end. So what we've done is, after the cheese sauce was made, we've added all the cheese into it and we incorporated it into the milk. We went ahead and added in our partially cooked pasta. All I did was I took the elbow macaroni, cooked it in boiling water, 2 or 3 minutes less than the cook time that is stated on the bag, and so that way it's still got some stiffness to it. And now I just added it into the sauce. Now you'll notice that the sauce was a little thinner than you would notice on macaroni and cheese. But all we've done is we left the heat on the cheese on about low to medium, and we've kind of just slowly started allowing it to cook into the noodles. As you notice, you'll notice that some of the liquid is starting to steam out, and the cheese sauce is actually starting to thicken. Guys, this really isn't a real hard recipe. You can make it more complicated by trying to thicken it with roux, or even using cream, or using any kind of milk that you want. I just think that's a really simple, easy recipe, and there's not much to it. Now, I just added salt and pepper to taste. It'll depend on the kind of cheese that you buy, so I don't want to tell you an exact amount, but just kind of add a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper at a time until you get to the desired texture you want. Now that we've let it kind of cook in the pan and really start to thicken up and get the cheese all the way around the noodles, we're gonna go ahead and put it into a casserole dish and cover it with panko breadcrumbs. Now, that's just a personal preference of mine. You can actually eat it straight out of the pan like this. You don't have to bake it, but I choose to bake it just so that I can get the browning on the breadcrumbs. Now that I got it in the casserole dish, I'm just gonna kind of take the panko breadcrumbs and put them evenly across the top. Really, all we're looking for them is to get a little bit of toast from the oven and give a nice crust to the top part of the macaroni and cheese. Now you'll notice that the sauce will even thicken a little bit more as it's in the oven as well. Alright, so we're going to put that in the oven and then we'll get working on the other parts of dinner today. Okay, so now that we've got the macaroni in the oven, we're going to go ahead and start on the pork chops. Now, I told you I got thick cut pork chops, so the way that I'm going to cook them is I'm first going to sear them in the pan, and then I'm going to finish them off in the oven so that way they can cook evenly. All I've got here is just a salt and pepper mixture that I'm going to put over each side of it. And I'm going to be generous with it. Nothing, I don't want to go too light on it because I want it to really give it a stronger flavor. I don't really think you need to put anything else on it. Salt and pepper should do just fine. So we're gonna go ahead and take these and put them into a medium-high pan. So we're gonna go ahead and flip it. And you see there we've got some really nice color on that side. Almost like a crust created on the outside of that. Alright, now that we've got good color on both sides of the pork chop, I'm going to go ahead and do this other one, and then we'll put them in the oven. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and start by prepping the asparagus. So what I like to do, just to kind of give them all a uniform size and also get rid of some of these bottom ends that aren't as flavorful, I'll go ahead and just kind of bunch them together and kind of take off those bottom ends. Now you've got asparagus that are all kind of the same size and look better as far as presentation goes. Now, something that I'm going to do, because the outer skin of asparagus is actually rather tough and not appetizing, is I'm going to go ahead and peel the asparagus. So I'll just start by just twisting it all around and peeling the bottom parts of the asparagus. I'll go ahead and leave the top part just because it kind of looks nice and the bitterness isn't really there at that top part. So I'm going to go ahead and peel the rest of these, and then we will get started on cooking them. We are going to cook the asparagus. Now, asparagus cooks really fast and really easily. I am going to make it a little unhealthy by cooking it with some butter. So I'll start by just melting the butter into the pan. Alright, now that we've got the butter all the way melted into the pan, we will put the asparagus into there. Now, so now that we've got the asparagus into the pan, we're going to go ahead and make sure that it gets fully coated with the butter that was melted in there. And completely level in the pan so that it can cook evenly. I'll go ahead and just take a salt and pepper mixture and just kind of go over the top of them. Okay, so we're just gonna kind of keep moving them in the pan and let them get brown on all sides of it. You also do want them to kind of soften up. I like them to have a little crisp to them. I don't want them to be too soggy. So I've got it on medium-high heat so that way we can get the browning on it as quick as possible without overcooking them. All right, when you start to see that they've got a little like weakness to them, and you've seen some of the fibers in the asparagus kind of break down, and you've got some browning on it, you know that you're getting close to the end. Like I said, I don't want them to overcook. I do want them to have some bite still left into them. You want them to look nice and shiny as well with the butter coating them, and then you just put salt and pepper on them. I wouldn't put any kind of other seasoning. You can. You can put like onion powder or garlic powder or things like that, but then you have to be mindful of the fact that you don't want the seasoning to burn as you're cooking these items. Alright, so now that we've got those cooked all the way, alright, so I'm going to show you guys how I cut some of this fruit for the fruit that we're going to have for later. So I'm going to start with the personal watermelon, and I'm going to cut both ends flat. Now as you can see, I cut it without cutting most of the red flesh off. So what I'm going to do then is that now that I've got both ends cut off, I'm going to cut around it. Doing my best to not cut as much into the flesh as possible to save some of that. Now I did get some of the flesh on some of this. Like I said, your best bet is to try and get as little as possible. Now you'll see on the other end that I didn't quite make it all the way around. So you just go ahead and take your knife and start trimming the kind of rind part off the top part. So I'll start by initially cutting it in half, taking the one half and then cutting it in half, and then taking that one and cutting it in half. Now that I've got all of that cut in half, you can do different things to make nicer presentations. One of the things I used to do back in the country club is I would take this middle part out, create a flat surface, and then it kind of cut slices all the way through it. Being is that I'm not really looking for presentation that much as of right now, I'm going to go ahead and just cut these into small like watermelon slices. So you get nice kind of watermelon slices all the way throughout. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the rest of this, and then I will show you guys how I'm going to do the pineapple. Okay, now we are going to cut the pineapple. I am going to start by cutting the top part of the pineapple off and the bottom half of the pineapple off. I am going to use the same concept that I used for the watermelon for the pineapple. So I'm going to go take my knife and just go all the way around the pineapple. Alright, so I'm going to do my best to take a lot of those like brown circular rivets that are in the pineapple off, because those aren't very appetizing when it comes to eating the pineapple. So we'll go ahead and make sure we get a lot of the skin off the board, because the pineapple will stick to it and I don't want it to be a part of our presentation. So now you'll see at the other half there's still some on there. We'll go ahead and take that off. Now pineapple has a core in the middle of it that I like to take out. So what we'll go ahead and do is start by cutting the pineapple in half, taking those halves and cutting it in half, and then this is kind of the tricky part. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to cut the core out. So you'll see that you've got a quarter slice here, and what I like to do, and I'm going to try and show you the best that I can from this angle, is take the knife at a diagonal and cut the core out. So I might not have got it as good just because of the angle that I was cutting at, but we're going to go ahead and cut the core out. So I'm going to do that to the rest of these. Now that we've got these cut and I've got some of this trimmed off, we can go ahead and make nice slices of pineapple. Now you can make them as small or as big as you want by either cutting these quarters into halves again, or you can leave them bigger chunks like I like them. So, alright, I'm going to go ahead and cut the rest of these, and then we will start by finishing. So we've taken the pork chops out of the oven and we've allowed them to rest for about 5 minutes. The reason you want to rest larger proteins like this is because it gives it the opportunity for the heat to kind of leave the surface of the meat and the juices to kind of go back to the center of the meat, so you'll lose a lot less of them as you're cutting into it. So you'll notice that we've got just kind of a little bit of hue of pink in there. That these are done to medium well. Right, pork can be done up to 155. They don't have to be 165 to be well done. So I'll go ahead and cut these and we'll put them on the plate. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut them on a bias. So just long strokes of the knife. And you'll notice as you're cutting them that they've got a nice crust on the outside and on the surface of it. So now that we got those cut, let's go ahead and plate it and show you the final presentation. Alright guys, so that was my video on making like a pork chop dinner or pork steak dinner. You know, I just did some really simple things, nothing too crazy as far as like the macaroni and cheese goes. Obviously there's a lot more like complex ways to make macaroni and cheese, and you know, I just did something really simple because it's going to be a side dish, not really kind of a main course. Cooking the asparagus, you know, I just made sure that because it's peeled and all of those things, that it came out really good, and just making sure that the pork chop's all the way cooked through and you get that nice sear on the end. Guys, I just kind of wanted to show you how I would make that kind of dinner and all the sides with it. If you like my channel, please push the subscribe button, and if you really like this video, please push the like button. Thank you guys.